Welcome.
Welcome to the Everything Podcast. In this episode, I'll be recapping the Not Very Grand Tour, The Glory and the Power, which was broadcast on the 18th of April 2025. I'm recording this episode only a couple of days later, on the 21st of April 2025. So without further ado, let's get on with it. We start off with the title sequence, and James introduces the episode. Richard threatens to injure James. Some highlights from this episode are shown. Richard mentions Shakespeare. James introduces a clip from the Grand Tour, which took place in Detroit. This clip from the Grand Tour is shown. Within this clip, Jeremy introduces the cars him, James and Richard are driving. Richard discusses his car. James does the same. James quotes something. Jeremy discusses his car. Jeremy insults Richard's and James's car. Richard mentions Florida. Jeremy, Richard and James showcase their cars. Jeremy mentions Journey's Don't Stop Believing. Richard reveals only one seat in his car comes as standard and you have to pay $1 for the rest. Jeremy mentions Henry Ford. James introduces the decibel meter. Jeremy participates in the decibel meter challenge. Jeremy learns that he achieved 125.2 decibels. Richard chooses to go next in the decibel meter challenge. Jeremy and James discuss Richard's numerous crashes. Richard participates in the decibel meter challenge. Richard learns that he achieved 118.8 decibels. James participates in the decibel meter challenge. James learns that he achieved 128 decibels. James does his victory dance. Jeremy attempts to defend his car. Richard and James discuss engines. Richard mentions mobile phones. James mentions dishwashers. Richard reveals that car engines are tested to minus 40 degrees Celsius. James mentions the Hypercar film from Season 1, Episode 1 of the Grand Tour, where Jeremy drove a McLaren P1, Richard drove a Porsche 918, and James drove a Ferrari, the Ferrari. A section from the Hypercar film from Season 1 of the Grand Tour is shown. Jeremy compliments his, James and Richard's cars. Richard, James and Jeremy showcase their cars. Jeremy reveals how complicated it is to get the P1 ready for drag races. Richard and James reveal how in contract easy it is for them in their 918 and the Ferrari. James, Jeremy and Richard participate in a drag race which repeatedly has a different finishing order. Richard, James and Jeremy discuss their shoes. James mentions horse poo and how it contrasts to a car engine. James insults diesel cars. Richard introduces the Ripsaw. Richard showcases the Ripsaw. Richard reveals this Ripsaw costs £300,000. Richard compares the Ripsaw steering wheel to Thunderbirds. Richard runs over some bollards whilst trying to park. Richard drives through a shopping centre wall. Richard reveals how this Ripsaw has been upgraded and enhanced. Richard mentions camels. James insults Richard. President Kennedy's 1961 speech about wanting to get a man on the moon by the end of the 1960s is shown. James reveals what NASA has to do to make President Kennedy's wish a reality. James introduces the Corvette. James reveals which astronauts bought Corvettes. James mentions rockets, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong and Mike Collins, as well as a Ford Fiesta. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin with Mike Collins landing on the moon is shown. James showcases the Corvette. James reveals which parts of the Corvette have been changed since Neil Armstrong drove it. Richard insults James. James and Richard discuss their favourite cars. Richard mentions Jeremy's favourite cars. Richard insults Jeremy. Jeremy introduces the Chiron. Jeremy mentions the Concorde as well as comparing his Chiron to it. Jeremy showcases the Chiron. Jeremy compares the Chiron's full tank to shot glasses. Jeremy races his Chiron against a BMW M4. Jeremy Chiron obliterates the BMW M4. Jeremy believes the Chiron sounds relaxing. Jeremy insults France. Jeremy attempts an Italian accent to demonstrate an interaction with the Italian police. Jeremy attempts to not be late for a meeting. Jeremy succeeds. Rich and James insult Jeremy as well as mentioning James Bond. James and Richard insult each other. Jeremy introduces a racing driver who will drive his Richard and James cars so that their times depend on the car, not the driver. Jeremy and Richard insults James's car. The racing driver drives the Ferrari. Jeremy insults the speed of James's car. The racing car driver drives the Porsche 918. Richard feels confident in his car's ability. James insults Richard's cars. Jeremy bets that if his McLaren P1 doesn't win, James and Richard could destroy his house. Richard and James agree that the racing driver drives Jeremy's McLaren P1. The lap time of the Ferrari is 1:54.4. The lap time of the Porsche 918 is 1:54.2. The lap time of the McLaren P1 is 1:55.5. James and Richard blow up Jeremy's house, and Richard and James conclude the episode. That is my recap of the Not Very Grand Tour, the glory and the power. But in tomorrow's episode, I will be recapping Stamford Brother UK Season 2, Episode 11. Back to this episode, where let me know what you thought of the Not Very Grand Tour, the glory and the power. If you watched it, my recap. If you didn't, you could be thoughts on both of those in the comments below as well. But anything else you want to cover the channel, such as any previews or recaps, you can put those in the comments below as well. Remember, you can also like, comment and subscribe. Now to tomorrow's episode, my recap of Stamford Brother UK Season 2, Episode 11. Goodbye.